The drunken technocracy, a formidable empire of tiger-like beings from a harsh jungle planet, swept over Jintal territories with merciless efficiency. Bred for war, their striped fur, razor-sharp claws, and heightened senses made them masters of combat. And this conquest was a carefully calculated maneuver. The drunken saw the Jintal, a gentle, antelope-like race with little history of conflict, as insignificant, unable to resist their overwhelming force. And they'd made one crucial assumption: the humans would not interfere. In the opening days, the drunken unleashed their most advanced weapon, a marvel of their scientific prowess: the technophage. The nanomachine swarm, programmed to dismantle any non-drunken technology, hummed through the occupied Jintal cities like an invisible plague, detecting and shredding every foreign circuit it encountered. Tanks, aircraft, communications, all foreign tech was torn apart molecule by molecule. Confident their victory was secure, drunken forces set up command centers, determined to crush the remaining Jintal resistance without delay. Amid their advance, drunken soldiers wore smug expressions beneath their helmets, boasting about the ease of their success. Drunken commanders strode through fields, convinced of their untouchable might. Yet their hubris left them blind to subtle signs of change, a hum of anxiety rippling beneath the surface as reports began to circulate. Rumors of precise, deadly strikes against drunken patrols spread quietly at first, but each whispered tale brought unease. Officers brushed off these stories as hearsay, dismissing them with arrogance. Primitive tactics, they muttered to each other. Insignificant efforts of a dying species. But they were wrong. On a rugged hill overlooking a freshly occupied drunken outpost, a lone figure lay hidden among the rocks and shrubs, his presence cloaked by shadows. He was tall and weather-beaten, with piercing eyes that missed nothing as he looked through the scope of a Macmillan TAC 50 sniper rifle. He was known only as Demon, a call sign spoken in hushed tones by the few Jintal who had heard of him. This was his first mission on Jintal soil, but he'd carried out dozens like it on other worlds, each one etching his skill and reputation deeper into military legend. And Demon was American, an American sniper, brought in by Earth's Terran Union to hold the line against drunken overreach. Beside him, lying equally still and silent, was Zomesh, a Jintal with eyes sharper than any scope. His coat was a dusty brown, blending perfectly with the hill's sparse vegetation. Zomesh watched Demon, both awe and skepticism flickering across his otherwise solemn face. This partnership was unusual, a Jintal and a human. Yet here they were, sharing a mission that bound their fates as firmly as if they'd been born on the same planet. Command's intel says this is a high-ranking outpost, Demon muttered, his voice low and steady, keeping his eyes on the scope. Zomesh nodded, though he couldn't quite shake his doubt. You really think we can make a difference? They control our skies. They have that machine swarm thing. Demon gave a tight, humorless smile. They're expecting technology, Zomesh. They're not ready for this. He tapped his rifle, a massive weapon devoid of electronics, custom-built for long-range precision under any conditions. No circuits, no digital interference, just steel, gunpowder, and unparalleled aim. It was a piece of history as much as it was a weapon, and in Demon's hands, it had become something legendary. Zomesh squinted through his antique spotting scope, eyes tracking drunken movement below. There, he whispered. Third tent from the left. It's marked as a command station. Demon adjusted his sights, steadying his breathing as he lined up the shot. The drunken officer below strode confidently through the encampment, his head held high, oblivious to the unseen danger. Demon could see the officer's striped fur and gleaming armor in perfect detail. Time to send a message, he murmured. The rifle cracked, the shot piercing through the air, then silence. A heartbeat later, the officer dropped to the ground, a single, crimson wound marking his end. Chaos erupted as drunken soldiers scrambled for cover, confusion and panic flashing across their faces. Zomesh stared in amazement. One shot, and the drunken camp was in disarray. For the first time, he saw a flicker of hope, faint yet undeniable. "So it begins," he whispered. Below, the drunken soldiers frantically scanned the horizon, yet none dared return fire. Their training taught them to face enemies head-on, but they weren't prepared for an adversary who struck from a distance and vanished without a trace. Reports of Demon's first kill spread quickly through the ranks. They began calling him the ghost of Jintal Hills, a mysterious threat who haunted their every step. Meanwhile, drunken commanders dismissed the loss of a single officer as inconsequential. To them, this was still a minor disturbance in a major operation. But as days passed, more officers fell to the same invisible hand. The drunken soldiers became hesitant to salute outdoors, wary of exposing themselves as targets. Entire units began moving in zigzagging patterns, their rigid discipline undermined by fear of the unseen sniper. What had started as a swift, victorious invasion now seemed shadowed by a growing unease. Demon and Zomesh continued their campaign undetected, each shot another step in a quiet, relentless war of attrition that no drunken officer could stop. The drunken had aimed for an effortless conquest, but they had miscalculated. The humans were not the meek allies they'd assumed, and this one American sniper, partnered with a single Jintal, had just redefined the rules of their war. Demon and Zomesh settled into their new rhythm as a team, blending into the craggy terrain surrounding the drunken outposts and keeping their every move unseen. With each passing day, their collaboration grew more instinctual, Zomesh's keen eyes and subtle mannerisms balancing Demon's precision and unyielding focus. For Demon, this mission was a return to the tactical roots of sniping, where simplicity met lethality, and he found himself surprised by Zomesh's natural adaptability. The drunken presence, once so dominant, had started to feel the effects of the pair's relentless strikes. Demon's American grit and experience fueled each shot, his practiced patience unbending despite the physical and mental toll of such precise warfare. Unlike most of the drunken soldiers who trained for frontline combat, Demon had spent years mastering the art of covert engagement. Every movement he made, from his steadying breaths to his grip on the Macmillan TAC-50, was deliberate, and every target he struck had an impact on the drunken's nerve. The silence between him and Zomesh was often only broken by the murmur of coordinates and wind calculations. Zomesh, initially wary of Demon's cold efficiency, was beginning to understand that this ruthlessness was their greatest advantage. They'd observe a drunken officer give orders or inspect a convoy, and within moments Demon's rifle would speak, a crack echoing across the distance, sending drunken soldiers scattering for cover. Each shot was a punctuation, a reminder that no one in the drunken ranks was safe. In the heat of one mission, Demon and Zomesh lay camouflaged along the ledge of a ridge, overlooking a drunken command post. Below, the drunken were regrouping, their commanders desperately attempting to regain control. Demon's scope centered on an officer pacing near a tactical map. "Left side by the crate," Zomesh whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of insects. Demon adjusted his aim, his face impassive as he marked the target. "Range?" Zomesh glanced through his rangefinder. 1,600 meters. "Wind is steady." Demon took a measured breath, his finger easing onto the trigger. Target acquired. In that instant, the crack of the rifle echoed off the rocks. Through the scope, Demon watched the officer crumple, the command post thrown into chaos. Soldiers scrambled to find cover, shouting orders and pointing in every direction but the right one. Another drunken officer gone, and another blow to their morale. Zomesh, usually silent after each kill, gave a rare nod of approval. "You're truly a ghost of them." Demon's face softened, just a flicker, as he adjusted his scope for the next target. "Sometimes fear is the best weapon. They won't see me, but they'll feel every shot." In the days that followed, Demon and Zomesh expanded their reach. They began targeting not just the commanders, but supply lines and convoys, strategically crippling the drunken's ability to resupply or reinforce positions. They destroyed vehicles, sabotaged equipment, and used the Dronkin's own routines against them. After each ambush, they vanished as if they'd never been there, leaving the Dronkin shaken and paranoid. By now, the Dronkin had given Demon a name, the Ghost of Jintal Hills. It was spoken with contempt by commanders and with trembling respect by the rank and file. Dronkin soldiers refused to stay in exposed areas, and many dared not even venture into their own camps without first scanning the ridgelines for a glint of a scope. Their fear transformed into caution, and their arrogance slowly dissolved. One night, as Demon cleaned his rifle, Zomesh observed him with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. "You're different from what I expected," he said at last. Demon looked up, his face unreadable in the dim light. "How's that?" Zomesh hesitated. Humans are usually warm, expressive. But you bring silence and darkness wherever you go. Demon paused, his hands steady over the rifle. War changes people. When you've seen enough of it, you learn to focus on the objective. Emotions get in the way. Zomesh nodded, though he sensed there was more Demon wasn't saying. There was a story there, buried deep, but he knew now wasn't the time to ask. The Dronkin, meanwhile, were growing desperate. Their leaders pushed for an end to what they'd begun to call the human Jintal insurgency, though no one knew how many human operatives were even on the ground. They reinforced the technophage, recalibrating it to search for anything that could reveal the whereabouts of the elusive sniper, yet they continued to fail. Demon and Zomesh operated entirely without electronics, relying on manual scopes, maps, and sheer experience, all the while staying undetected by the all-seeing swarm. And as Dronkin losses mounted, whispers began among their ranks. Rumors spread that Demon and Zomesh were more than soldiers. They were symbols of a force the Dronkin had underestimated, a partnership forged from necessity and resilience. Late one evening, after a particularly successful strike on a high-ranking Dronkin officer, Zomesh watched Demon pack up his gear with the same meticulous care he always showed. "Do you ever rest?" Zomesh asked, though he wasn't sure why. Demon gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "No rest until it's done. That's how wars are won." His eyes held an intensity that Zomesh now recognized as determination, something that would drive him until their mission was complete. As they moved silently through the night, Demon sensed a shift in his Jintal companion. Zomesh no longer looked at him with doubt, but with the trust and resolve that came from surviving together under fire. They were no longer just sniper and spotter. They were partners in a war for survival, a war they would wage with precision, patience, and the relentlessness of a force unwilling to back down. And the Dronkin knew now that they were not facing just another military campaign. They were facing something far more tenacious, a human sniper and his Jintal ally, bound by purpose and united in a battle for freedom. The atmosphere around Jintal territory had transformed into a tense standoff, the once unyielding Dronkin resolve now tinged with uncertainty. As reports of Demon's precision strikes spread through their ranks, the once confident commanders found themselves second-guessing their every decision. The myth of the Ghost of Jintal Hills loomed larger with each kill, undermining morale and igniting paranoia. In response, the Dronkin implemented desperate measures, their arrogance slowly eroding into frustration. Amidst the chaos, Demon and Zomesh continued their campaign, working seamlessly as shadows that struck from the dark. Their target list had shifted from officers to high-value equipment, their tactics evolving in tandem with the Dronkin's responses. Each mission deepened the bond between the human sniper and his Jintal spotter, their mutual respect blossoming into a profound partnership forged in the crucible of war. One evening, as they settled into their vantage point overlooking a Dronkin logistics depot, Zomesh turned to Demon, his eyes reflecting the dim light of the stars above. "If we can take out their supplies, they'll be forced to pull back. They're already stretched thin." Demon nodded, adjusting his grip on the TAC-50. "Exactly, but we need to time it right. Once we fire, we can't stay to see the fallout." Zomesh scoured the depot through his binoculars, assessing the patrol patterns of the drunken guards. Looks like they've got extra security tonight. They're expecting something. Good. It means they're worried, Demon replied, settling his crosshairs on a supply truck laden with crates. When they start to doubt, that's when we strike. As the drunken soldiers moved about their business, tension filled the air. Demon and Zomesh had grown accustomed to the pulse of anticipation that thrummed in their veins before a mission. They exchanged brief glances, their understanding unspoken, and settled into silence. "Shooter ready," Demon murmured, his breath steady as he zeroed in on the truck. "Spotter ready," Zomesh confirmed, his eyes locked on the guards. "Wind steady at 7 kilometers per hour. I'll call the distance." Demon squeezed the trigger, a controlled breath preceding the crack of the rifle that shattered the quiet night. The bullet soared through the air, a swift harbinger of destruction. The explosion followed almost instantly, echoing through the valley as flames erupted, illuminating the darkness. The drunken guards scrambled in disarray, confusion and fear taking root as they realized they were under attack. "Target acquired," Zomesh shouted, pointing to a commanding officer sprinting away from the chaos. "He's trying to regroup." "Got it." Demon's hands moved with precision as he reloaded, his focus unwavering. The next shot rang out, a lethal whisper that cut through the pandemonium, and the officer fell, his body hitting the ground before he could issue any orders. "Two down," Zomesh reported, his heart racing with the thrill of their success. "Let's push further while we have them rattled." Their next target was the command tent situated at the far end of the depot. Zomesh knew it was filled with strategists trying to counter the very chaos they were creating. "They won't expect us to take out the command center," he said, determination coursing through him. "If we eliminate their decision-makers, they'll be lost." "Let's do it," Demon replied, scanning the area for movement. He adjusted his position, ensuring he had a clear line of sight. "You ready for this?" "I was born ready," Zomesh responded with a fierce grin, his excitement infectious. They moved quickly, ducking low to the ground as they navigated the treacherous terrain. Each step was measured, their senses heightened by the adrenaline coursing through their veins. As they neared the command tent, they spotted a group of officers gathered, their animated discussions masked by the chaos of the ongoing assault. Demon set up his rifle, his heart pounding in rhythm with the distant explosions. "You see the one in the center?" he asked, locking eyes with Zomesh. "Yes." "He's coordinating their response," Zomesh confirmed, adjusting his binoculars to focus on the target. "He's crucial." "Then he's the one," Demon replied, lining up the crosshairs. 3, 2, 1, shooter ready. "Spotter ready," Zomesh echoed, his breath held in anticipation. "It's now or never." The crack of Demon's rifle was like a thunderclap, and within moments, the commanding officer crumpled to the ground. The remaining officers froze, their expressions morphing from shock to terror as realization dawned on them. Demon's eyes narrowed as he spotted a group of drunken soldiers rushing toward the tent. "We need to vanish now." They slipped back into the shadows, their hearts racing as they navigated through the chaos unfolding behind them. Behind them, explosions lit the night sky, illuminating the scene of their triumph. The drunken were reeling, their command structure in disarray as confusion reigned. As they made their way to a safe distance, Zomesh glanced back at the burning depot. "Do you think they'll realize what just happened?" "They'll have no choice but to," Demon replied, his voice steady. "We've shattered their perception of control. That's the beginning of their downfall." The two allies, now bound by shared victories and the thrill of their deadly dance, set their sights on the next phase of their campaign. They had become more than just a sniper and spotter. They were a force of nature, a storm-gathering strength, ready to unleash fury on an enemy that had underestimated them. In the depths of the night, as the drunken reeled from their losses, Demon and Zomesh found themselves on the precipice of a turning point. They were not just participants in a war. They were the harbingers of change, and the tide was finally shifting in favor of the Jintal resistance. The world around them buzzed with the whispers of what was to come, and for the first time, hope ignited in their hearts. The fight was far from over, but they were ready to face whatever came next. The tension in the air was palpable as the Dronkin prepared for their final assault on Jintal territory, desperation fueling their resolve. Having suffered significant losses and faced relentless sniper fire, the once mighty technocracy was now a wounded beast cornered by the audacity of humanity and the defiance of the Jintal. Their leaders convened in a makeshift command center, desperately plotting their next move while the specter of Demon loomed over their plans, a phantom of dread whose shadow fell longer with each passing day. In the heart of the Jintal resistance, Demon and Zomesh received intel that the Dronkin had amassed their forces for a decisive strike. The Dronkin aimed to reclaim their lost ground and crush the spirit of the Jintal once and for all. But the human and his Jintal ally were resolute. They would not allow the Dronkin to succeed. "We have to hit them hard and fast," Zomesh urged, his voice laced with urgency. "If we can eliminate their general, we'll send them reeling. They're already fragile." Demon nodded, his mind racing through tactical possibilities. "Agreed. We'll need to coordinate with Pineda and the Nomad Fleet Recon team. They'll provide the distraction we need to get in close." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the war-torn landscape, the Jintal resistance prepared for their most audacious mission yet. The air was thick with anticipation, a sense of foreboding that hung over them like a shroud. Demon assembled his gear with meticulous care, his fingers brushing against the familiar contours of his TAC-50, the weapon that had become an extension of his will. Pineda, the seasoned leader of the Nomad Fleet Recon, joined them, his presence a reassuring anchor amidst the gathering storm. "We'll move under the cover of darkness," he instructed, eyes glinting with determination. "Our goal is to create chaos, draw their fire, and allow you to make the shot. But we can't underestimate their response." Demon locked eyes with Pineda, their shared understanding evident in the silence that followed. "I'll take the shot," he affirmed. "Just make sure you give me a clear path." As night enveloped the battlefield, the team moved stealthily toward the Dronkin encampment. Zomesh's keen senses guided them, his instincts honed through countless skirmishes. They positioned themselves on a hill overlooking the Dronkin forces, a sprawling camp bustling with soldiers preparing for the imminent assault. "Look," Zomesh whispered, his gaze focused on a cluster of Dronkin officers gathered near the command tent. "The general is there, flanked by his guards." Demon's pulse quickened as he surveyed the scene. "They're too exposed. We can't let this opportunity slip away." He set up his rifle, calculating the distance, windage, and the trajectory of the shot. "Shooter ready," he announced, the world narrowing to the crosshairs that danced over the general's chest. "Spotter ready," Zomesh confirmed, his breath steady. "We have a slight breeze from the east, around 5 kilometers per hour. I'll call the distance." Demon's focus sharpened as he waited for Zomesh to relay the information. "Distance confirmed," Zomesh said, his voice calm yet urgent. "You've got this, Demon." With a final breath, Demon settled into the rhythm of the moment, his entire being focused on the target. As he prepared to pull the trigger, the distant sounds of battle erupted around them. Pineda's team engaged the Dronkin guards, chaos erupting in a cacophony of gunfire and explosions. "Now!" Zomesh shouted, his voice cutting through the noise. Demon squeezed the trigger, a mechanical sigh escaping as the bullet shot forward, a streak of lethal intent. Time slowed as he watched it arc through the air, his heart pounding with the weight of the moment. The bullet struck true, piercing the general's heart with a decisive impact. The commander's body jerked violently before crumpling to the ground, the shock rippling through the Dronkin ranks like a thunderclap. "Good hit," Zomesh shouted, a fierce grin splitting his face. "Now let's move before they regroup." With the general down, the Dronkin forces faltered, their cohesion shattered. Pineda's team pressed forward, sowing discord among the ranks as Demon and Zomesh slipped back into the cover of the trees. They navigated the tumult, adrenaline surging through their veins, a mix of exhilaration and fear propelling them forward. But the Dronkin were not done yet. In their desperation, they unleashed the technophage, a swirling mass of nanomachines that swept through the camp in search of the human technology. "Move!" Demon shouted, urging Zomesh to pick up the pace. "We have to get to higher ground." As they raced towards safety, the technophage lashed out, devouring anything electronic in its path. Explosions erupted behind them as the Dronkin turned their fury on the resistance fighters. "Keep going," Zomesh yelled, but they both knew they had to make a stand or risk being overwhelmed. Reaching a vantage point, they caught their breath and prepared for what lay ahead. From their position, they could see the chaos unfolding below. Dronkin soldiers retreating in panic, the technophage wreaking havoc, and Pineda's team fighting valiantly against overwhelming odds. "Demon, we can't let this opportunity pass," Zomesh insisted, determination hardening his voice. "We need to capitalize on their confusion." Demon nodded, the fire of resolve igniting within him. "We'll flank them and take out their remaining officers. Let's end this." As they descended, the sound of battle filled the air, their mission clear. Demon and Zomesh worked in tandem, executing their plan with deadly efficiency. Each shot fired was a calculated blow against the Dronkin, each fallen officer a step closer to victory. Finally, as dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson, the last remnants of the Dronkin force began to scatter. They had underestimated the resilience of their opponents, and the tide had irrevocably turned. Demon and Zomesh emerged from the shadows, bloodied but unbowed. Together, they stood as the embodiment of defiance, symbols of the Jintal resistance's indomitable spirit. They had fought not just for survival, but for a future where the Jintal could thrive free from oppression. As the last of the Dronkin retreated, leaving behind a battlefield littered with the remnants of their failed invasion, the cheers of the Jintal rose around them. They had triumphed against insurmountable odds, and the legacy of Demon, the ghost of Jintal Hills, would forever be etched into the annals of history. In that moment, with victory within reach, Demon and Zomesh exchanged a knowing glance. Bound by the trials they had faced together, they had proven that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, hope could ignite, and with it, the resolve to fight for a better tomorrow. As the dust settled over the battered Jintal landscape, the air hummed with the echoes of victory. The Dronkin technocracy, once a symbol of unstoppable force, had retreated, leaving behind a testament to their overconfidence and a new legend in its wake. The Jintal people celebrated their newfound freedom, their cheers reverberating through the hills that had witnessed the courage of the resistance. Demon, the legendary American sniper, stood at the edge of the camp, watching the jubilant Jintal. Beside him, Zomesh's antelope-like features were alight with pride, a bond forged through shared peril. Together, they had become the embodiment of defiance against tyranny. As the Jintal elders recounted tales of the ghosts of Jintal Hills, they honored Demon's indomitable spirit and unwavering dedication. His legend would ripple through generations, a reminder that even the most formidable foes could be overcome with cunning, bravery, and unity. Demon glanced at Zomesh, a silent promise exchanged between them. The struggle for peace had only just begun, but together, they would stand ready to face whatever challenges awaited them in the stars, their bond unbreakable.